Listen, Rich was the big promoter in Pittsburgh, in that area during the whole '70s and I think early in the '60s. I'm not sure. I didn't meet with him until like in the '70s, late '70s, where I had Pat Travers, and that's when I really got to meet Rich at the time. Rich is a slick. He's a promoter. And he's one of my best friends, by the way. So I love Rich to death and Cindy, and Rich is he gets it done. It never has a bad thing to say about, oh, this isn't going to happen or this isn't going to happen. It's going to happen. So, and he's always been one of those promoters, and so he was in that club of probably, I'd say at the most 30 people in the United States and pretty much around the world that had that kind of personality that kept him as the premier promoter in his area. Rich is an entrepreneur. He's a people's person. He's honest, which is not, well, let's don't get too fucking out of this. It's crazy on this one. I mean, as honest as you could be as a promoter in the music business in the '70s and '80s. Okay, so fairly transparent. All of them had their own deals and things that they did, and but Rich was, like I said, he was in that club of only a few promoters, and like in Pittsburgh, there wasn't another promoter that we would work with. So it was always Caesar Engler, and that was it. And I never knew Caesar. I had no idea I never met the guy. So, and that was his partner for whatever. Yeah, no. I mean, when they got together, when all the promoters got together and stuff, it was worse than when you watch the mob and everybody else to get together at Rayo's restaurant, and they all had the tables. It's just what they did. I think they mimicked. They thought they were all fucking godfathers or some shit like that, because they ran their own, territories. And so, I mean, Bill Graham, you couldn't fuck with Bill Graham. None of them. I mean, just, there wasn't a promoter that was going to come in and put a date up in Rich's territory or GM's territory in Chicago or any of them, So it was definitely that style. It was definitely like the mob. The promoters were, it isn't like today. Today it's big corporate shit, and everybody has certain things, and they do things certain ways, and whether you agree with it or not, it works. But it doesn't have that building of artists like they have it now. Now they take big artists and they just blow them up and get them as much money. Back then, these guys all had to survive in clubs. And they had to take Steve Miller and Hendrix and all the shit and take them through, and Bon Jovi and Mötley Crüe and all my bands and all that stuff. They had to take them through those steps of where they would lose $1,500 on a show. Okay, so when they would lose, they lost $1,500 because they tell you. They cry poor every time you do a settlement. They never made any money. I don't know how Rich built the big house and everything. Lived in St. Bart's and all that shit. I always say he must have been a rich kid or something, yeah. But they all had that thing that they never made any money. And they'd rent their furniture. I mean, Tom McCool in upstate New York, that the $2,000 you spent on backstage furniture was his lawn furniture. But it was just part of the ecosystem of how to keep all these guys alive, because they were really good promoters. They knew their markets. They knew where they could sell tickets. You have to remember, there wasn't even cell phones. There wasn't anything like that. There wasn't any Ticketmaster. There wasn't anything. People stood in lines outside of these arenas to get tickets, to buy tickets, So it was, and they all had deals on everything. I mean, it's let's make a deal, okay, every day. So they had from who was doing the beer to who was doing this, who was selling the T-shirts to who was bootlegging the T-shirts. Okay, so they had it pretty much figured out, and but they built an amazing infrastructure of building artists and making artists big in a live format. Well, normally you either sell tickets or you don't. Okay? So that's pretty much what it is. Either your band can sell tickets or you can't. Some promoters will make a bad judgment. And because they make a bad judgment, they make a bad judgment. Some days you get the bear and some days the bear gets you, But we had one, I think probably one of the worst ones I had was Don Law out of the Northeast. I had Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet, which was the hottest ticket in town. So I said, okay, we're going to put up one Great Woods. If we sell it out, we'll put up the other Great Woods. And he fought me and said, no, you got to put both up, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I said, Don, I said, no. But anyways, to make a long story short, I said, okay, what's sellout money? Because there was no guarantee. I said, so what's the sellout money? And I think at that time it was like $450,000, okay, for the 2 nights. So I said, okay, then you have to guarantee me sellout money, $450,000, if you're going to put it up. I said, but I want you to know something. If you don't sell one ticket, you will never see this band again, okay? This is 1986, or any of my bands, okay? He didn't sell out either one. He moaned and complained. And I said, Don, don't worry about losing whatever you lost on these. You will never do one of my shows for the rest of my life. So since 1986, Don Law never did Bon Jovi, Mötley Crüe, Scorpions, Skid Row, Guns N' Roses. Didn't do any of my bands. Okay, to this day. So that's how you had to play it. If your word is your word. You say you're going to do something, you have to do something. And it's happened to a couple other promoters, but normally the promoters in America were pretty solid. When you got to Mexico and you got to South America, and in the 70s and in early 80s and mid 80s, it could be a little crazy in Spain and Italy and shit like that was crazy back then, pretty much all the time. So the people that did that overbid, were actually being, usually guys like myself or not laboring crowds, and a lot of these agents won't allow people to outbid Rich, okay? Because they know that the 10 or 12 guys that are really, Rich was one of them, could do the best job in this town. So if there was going to be any money coming, it would come on a back end, okay? But Rich could do a good job because, some of these promoters would throw a big guarantee out there, and then they go up on sale and it puke. And then, the old saying is when the elephant lays down, it ain't getting up, okay? And they would spend money and throw money at it, and it just wouldn't sell, and they'd just go out of business. So it was really our job as managers and agents to try to protect these guys to a certain extent, to say, we have to keep these guys in the marketplace. We can't burn them out with with ridiculous money. And and that's where we got into, okay, you're gonna lose $250,000 on Rod Stewart, but you got Bon Jovi coming, you got the other ones, so then it was always the handout, and I had to pay for it because none of my bands didn't do that, didn't lay people out. So I was the guy paying it back, which was not fun for me. Yeah, so it's kind of like if somebody was throwing too much money out there and gonna go out of business, okay, it was our job to kind of protect them, okay, to a certain extent, okay. But when the days started coming to where they were the agents were just laying people out, then it came another dynamic, and that dynamic came the promoter always lost money, no matter what. So then he had all his side deals and everything else where a taxi couldn't pull up without him getting fucking $2 or, whatever. He'd charge kids $5 for air or something. They'd come up with all the kind of shit that would never be in the settlements, because that was money that they could say, well, I lost $50,000. Well, you lose $50,000 or $75,000, and then when you see the settlement, and on a date that he wins, and he makes $12,000, $14,000, $15,000, you go, how many dates do you have to make up for that one show? But it just became this vicious cycle that's still here, by the way. I think it all became such a big business, where it wasn't a big business when Rich started, okay? It was, how can I make $5,000 on Kansas? How can I make $3,500 on Martha Hoople? Or how can I put them in a club for 350 people and I can make $1,500? You know what I mean? That's how it wasn't these stadiums and these big grosses and all this shit, okay? And really, merchandise didn't come into play until 80s. That was really a merchandise play. I mean, until 90, I was still getting paid in cash. Okay, that was from the buildings and from the merchandisers. Okay, so, and they paid you in cash. So then you started getting the people like Irving doing FMIs, where they were controlling buildings, controlling the merchandise, controlling all the food sources and the popcorn and the hot dogs, and that's the real mafia kind of role. That's what that is. Harry M. Stevens, I have no idea who the guy is, but he does Madison Square Garden. This fucking guy charges I did a party for Bon Jovi, and I think my little miniature hot dog bill was like $24,000 or something, like 1987 or something like that. It was ridiculous. And, because they had the control over charging you whatever you wanted to. So to say what caused that was just that big money came into play, and it's just like what happened with casinos. The casino people came in, and legit people came in that ran the casinos. Not to say that legit and not legit weren't doing the same job, paying the same taxes. Not one would say they were legit, and one was saying they wasn't. So now you have where they're coming in and they control everything, and they're controlling it around the world. There was nobody back then. Jerry Weintraub was the only promoter that promoted around the world, okay, with Concerts West. And he did all the Zeppelin dates. He did all the Elvis dates, all that kind of stuff. He was the only person that did it. Bill Graham didn't do it. Bill Graham was in New York, went to San Francisco, ended up building an amazing promotion marketing company in San Francisco that sold 3 times the tickets of L.A. with 1/5 the population of L.A. But he built a culture. He built a culture of what Rich did. And the community liked Caesar Engler, okay? They liked Rich. He could get anything done you wanted in the town because he knew everybody in town. That's what you wanted. Like today, you don't get that. Nowadays, it's all about marketing teams out of Los Angeles or New York and big promotions that they do with their own, whether it's Clear Channel signs, live marketing, their internet marketing companies to everything else. It's a really big machine. Live Nation has Ticketmaster and they have Live Nation. So you got AEG, the other 800-pound gorilla, okay? And so now you get Rich and them who were part of that Live Nation thing, and Now he's back fighting to get any kind of traction because he can't sign an artist to play Pittsburgh in a stadium, or very few. He'll get one every now and then because most of them that can do arenas are going to be bought by AEG or Live Nation. Listen, everything reverts back to money, okay, especially today. So whether it's Sammy Hagar or Pearl Jam or anybody else that's socially conscious on what you charge this or what you charge that, they sit there and go, okay, 21 Pilots, I'm only going to charge $75 for a ticket. And that's through the whole house. Whoever wants to buy a ticket, they pay $75. Well, they end up on StubHub for $1,400, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000. The band doesn't get any of it, okay? Because all these promoters now are taking the tickets and throwing them on secondary markets. So they're taking their allotment. I'll take 300 tickets for a show for 50 shows of 21 Pilots. Take 100 tickets. You take 100 tickets. They'll make more money selling those tickets than they will promoting that date. So it's a different thing. You can't. But what Sammy and those type of people do is to say, let's try to keep it as real as we can. We don't want to be promoted by the man, okay? We like these grassroots, promotions and stuff. Dave Matthews likes them. All these guys, Fish, come and record. Here's a recording area. Sit here and record it and go home with it. You know what I mean? They don't care about any of that stuff. So, yeah, but it still comes down to what there's, our business is like a reef, okay? And all of a sudden, at some point, the fucking sharks came in and ate all the shit, okay? And almost killed the fucking reef, okay? And then they had to back off and let that reef grow again. And now they're back in and they're doing it again because they can't help themselves. It's the scorpion frog thing, That's what I do. I'm the scorpion. Well, so they come back and try to gouge everybody, but there's only so much money people have. So if you have to pay $300 for a seat to go see your band, you may see 2 concerts a year, not 6. Okay? So you go, listen, I'm going to pick the 2 I like because I can afford, I'm going to spend $2,000 this year on music. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do. And these people are ridiculous. They put up, it's the ticket, just ticket commissions. In 1995, we were trying to keep tickets under $25. Okay? Now you can't keep the ticket commission under $25. You know what I mean? Forget it. That's a really, really good point. The idea was that these 30 guys that were here were my partners. And I had to treat them like my partner because they bought the most amount of advertising on the local radio stations. So they were the ones that could go to the radio station and help if my single was there. I could get Rich to go into Pittsburgh and go to the station and go, what the fuck are you doing? You got to get on this. I got a date coming up in June on this. I got to do this. So they would help me market and promote my artists throughout their territory. And each one of them would do that. And the guys that didn't do that, I didn't work with. But they are, between them and car dealerships, they're the biggest advertisers of the radio station. So, and co-promotes and co-presents and all the rest of the stuff that they do. So that was the early days of, and plus, nobody knew that it was like, I've got a country western band and I didn't know that June or November 24th was opening day of deer hunting season. Okay, so I put up a country western band on opening day of deer hunting season. Okay, probably isn't gonna fucking work, but but the promoter would know it because he lived there, so he would know what was going on in that marketplace, and saying, you can't put the dates on sale. I used to be on calls for days, going through when do I put this on sale. I don't want to put mine on sale to this. This is when we have the best luck, blah, 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 blah. Fine. I put on all, it wasn't like, I just put 122 shows on sale and 2 different offerings, you know what I mean? And I've got 20 ticket prices, and I got all the rest of this shit that's going on. So it's a whole different world now. You know, it's if you said to Live Nation, hey, you got to talk to the radio. Yeah, okay. What do you want me to say? Yeah.
Who cares, right?
Yeah, it's like, they don't care. Well, you got marketing teams that give them tickets and they co-promote, and that's what they do. But they're not in that city. So like, Rich was that guy in Pittsburgh, that area that knew. You could say to Rich, I want to play. I told him, I did it. Rich, I want to play Hershey, Pennsylvania. John Bon Jovi's mom's from Hershey, and she was Miss Hershey or some shit. I don't know what it was. She was Miss Playboy Bunny or something. But so he wanted to play. He wanted to play Hershey. So he goes, fine, I'll find a place. And he found a big place to play Hershey, Pennsylvania. And we put up, sold it out, and that's why all of them were the Belkins and Cleveland and all that kind of stuff. And everybody were pretty good friends. There were a couple of idiots that you always get, but mostly they were pretty tight, pretty good friends. Well, it depends upon. I mean, Bill Graham was one of the best teachers of this. Okay, Bill Graham had this concept that he was the biggest fan of the band. Okay, when the band came there, like Pat Travers would go. I'd have Pat Travers playing with Hart at the Oakland Coliseum. Okay, he'd pay Pat Travers $10,000 doing a stadium second on the bill. But Pat had a wood plaque that said Pat Travers, and then he had lobster and crab and everything in the dressing room and all the alcohol. Probably $500 worth of shit in his dressing room. And Travers would go, "Isn't Bill the greatest?" I go, "No, he's not. He's fucking us. He's only giving us $10,000. I've been trying to tell you this. Yeah, no, I want to play for him. He's the greatest." So it was always that, and keeping everybody what they wanted. If it was a pillowcase full of blow, then it was a pillowcase full of blow. If that was on the rider, that's what it was. If it was girls in the shower, girls were in the shower. If it was whatever it was, you just make shit up, and they'd do it because they were promoters. They knew how to promote shows and take care of artists. Fishing trips, golf trips, whatever, bowling parties, dinners, whatever. They wanted to make sure that the band loved them, because that way they would come back to them. And say, "Oh, I got to play for you."
As well as the managers.
But the managers always wanted to make the money. Okay, the artists wanted the money, but they never thought to get it anyways. Because you remember, in the 70s and 80s, ticket prices were between $7 and $20 in the mid-80s. Okay? So there wasn't... So as long as, like the Scorpions would always tell me, I'd say, well, you don't have to spend the money on a hotel room like that. Exactly. Actually, the truth of the matter is Scott was the one, my brother. My brother's the one who said, I want to go to Nashville. I think that Nashville is the next big thing. And I said, then go down there and let's try it. Because remember, rock was pretty dead. Okay? Rock had been pretty tough. the record business was really in the shitters. Everything was going down, and so when we went there, Scott signed Chris Cagle, and then we signed a bunch of country artists. That really gave us a new life in that country world, which we were never in. I didn't know about hay rides and fucking fairs and cotton candy shows and shit like that. These guys all lived for it. That's what they lived for. And I had this girl, Shelby. Oh, it's a long story. But anyways, I had some crazy fucking people. And just as crazy as rock people. But it's so different because country is, I call country is like NASCAR. You can go back and go into the pits kind of NASCAR, and the drivers are walking around and you can wave to them and they're right there. And people get access to NASCAR, okay? And then you got rock and pop, which is like Formula One. You get no access. So, you get just a lot of crazy fucking people, a lot of rednecks. They make a lot of money. I mean, they tour a lot. We've done very well there, but, they're just as goofy as can be. I mean, you would have Garth Brooks that would sit there and set for 24 hours to sign every thing that he could during a thing called fanfare, where all the fans come, and then the bands would come and take their fans and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner for them, play a show for them for free, go play the stadium for free. Fucking rock bands, I'd have to take a shotgun and fucking stick it in their mouth and drag them over to say hi to a crippled kid. It's like, they didn't do any of that shit. Okay, so it was a real, crazy dynamics between the two. But anyway, Scott's the one that started the Nashville thing to bring where it's at today. It's a little bit uneasy for me because I'm rolling and he's not, in the sense of at the moment. Okay, but you get what you do. He was smart. He sold. There's a lot of promoters that didn't sell, that didn't get any money, and then were out. Okay, and it was inevitable that was going to happen. And so he was able to do that. He was able to get money, and plus keep his relationships, because a lot of people like, Katy Perry when she started. Okay, Don Fox did every Katy Perry show from the time she was in clubs. Did all of Michael Bublé. Did all that. Don Fox, one promoter, right, out of New Orleans. No guarantee, really good promoter, real good promoter. It's like Rich. They're all friends. And did them all. When it came time that she blew up, Live Nation threw the fucking big checkbook out, and they grabbed it. And all of a sudden, Don's out. So now Rich is fighting for, Kansas States and Earth, Wind, and Fire shows, and pretty much what he was doing in the 60s, and so he's back to where he was, but he's enjoying it. He likes to do some stuff. He doesn't need the money, you know what I mean? I think he has his first Holy Communion money, so he doesn't spend any money. He thinks he'll tell you he does, but he doesn't spend any money. And they live a great life together. Him and Cindy are just like twins. You know what I mean? And so, and they travel and they got great families, and so, this has been a great time for all of us to go through this. At least in the promoters world, not too many of them went to prison. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like, it actually wasn't organized crime, it was disorganized crime. That's how I think they spared themselves from going to actual jail, because they could never say it was organized, because it certainly wasn't.
That's great, man.
Oh my God.
Cindy was telling me Gene was forever trying to get after it.
Well, Gene used to. Okay. He used.
Please. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Gene used to have this Hugh Hefner kind of thing that he was always with girls. And so I think he was all over Cindy every time that he ever saw her. And so this went on since 1975. So, and I don't think he knows Rich's name because Gene would, he'd only know Cindy, he wouldn't know Rich. And then you go, no, Gene, this is Rich Engler. Is that Cindy's, whatever, what is that, her husband? Yeah, sad. So that would be Gene, yeah. So, but, yeah, I mean, it's just, Rich and Cindy had really good friends with the band, with the artists. I mean, look at his guitar collection. He's got one of the biggest guitar collections in the world. Not trying to, he just did it. So he'd say, hey, sign it, and then he put it in there, and you have a set list and a backstage pass, and close it up, and next 2 days he'd have another one, and he's got 300 and some guitars. He's probably got 5 Springsteens, and stuff like that. So he's got a lot sitting there, and just his memorabilia shit that he has, So he was just, Rich is a good guy. He's got a big heart. If you don't have a big heart and you're a promoter, you're dead, because the bands smell it, and the managers smell it, and the agents smell it. So it's hard to get that territory. It's hard for Rich to get that Pittsburgh and that whole because that's a big area, along with Belkins and stuff in Cleveland. So I take my hat out to them because they worked. Jerry Michelson and Arnie Granite worked in Chicago like crazy. You know what I mean? Ron Delster worked in New York like crazy. Bill owned San Francisco. So you have to, and now you just don't have that anymore. You have Live Nation or AEG. And it's a bunch of people that you have no idea. Even when I do all the marketing promotion on all my dates, it's who's dealing with this guy's dealing with. The same guy that's dealing with Pittsburgh is dealing with Cleveland and Miami. And so I don't think you get that personal attention anymore. But that's just part of it. It's like, why don't doctors come to your house anymore? It's just ain't going to happen. I guess, listen, we were, in the 70s and, in the 60s and the early 70s, it was a real great time for music because you had that whole British invasion, you had shit that you never saw before, and there was no information highway. So, like, we had a couple magazines, and I would go to Bellatti's shoe store that was the record store to get my shit. So not like today.
Let's try it again.
So there wasn't a lot of clutter that was around you. So you got to focus. You got to read all of the liner notes. You became fans of a type of band. Okay? So, and you would pretty much dress like them, act like them, everything. Like you didn't, if you said to somebody, what do you listen to? They'd go, I'm listening to Sabbath. You knew what their whole collection of shit was. Okay? If you were Bon Jovi, then that's another one. If you were Van Halen, that's a different group of people. And nowadays, that doesn't happen. Very few, the niche groups are like, I'm still a Slayer fan. I'm still but those are from the old days that are still there, or a Kiss fan or whatever. But all the kids that would say, what do you listen to? They'd go, I listen to everything. I listen to hip hop. I listen to, country. I listen to everything. Well, people say, they go, how you get into it? They go, well, you're a self-made man because, you were a waiter. Well, what the fuck were you supposed to do when you got out of the Army? Okay, well, you're supposed to be CEO of a company? You had to go to work. Now, I knew one thing. I worked construction with my dad from the time I was 12 years old till I was 17 years old. And I went, I'll rob banks before I become a welder. I can tell you that. I'll do anything but work with my dad in construction. I'm not doing that shit, okay? And I just kind of gravitated to it. People that I found that were in it helped me, and I guess thought I was smart or whatever, and I guess I said the right things to the right people most of the time, and got to get on this fucking wild ride and live a life that most people would never dream of being part of. You know, it's like shit happens. I don't know. I mean, I didn't plan it, didn't go to school for it, didn't know anything about it. There wasn't any schools for it. And it's just a matter of I guess having the upbringing of, excuse me, I guess it's having the upbringing of, you know, shake somebody's hand and do it and be responsible and take ownership and all that kind of stuff that got people to bet on me. And then, because that's all it is. It's all we do. All we do, like the artists say to me, well, would you listen to my stuff? I go, listen, it's not about listening, man. I'm a handicapper. You know what a handicapper is? It's a guy that goes to the racetrack and he looks for the fucking horse to ride, okay, to bet on. Now, the great handicappers don't bet on every horse, okay? They may sit there and not bet on a horse for years until they know that everything is in the check mark that says this one has a chance to run. That's what I do. Okay. And so I just try to pick the right horse to ride based on watching what people, connection in people. It's like people say, well, Jesus, you built this empire with Kiss and the merchandising. How do you guys do this? Is Gene just the smartest guy in the world? I go, well, yeah, because what we do is very scientific. What we do is we find shit that people buy, and then we put Kiss on it. It's really, it's really like fucking what an amazing thing to do. What are people into? What is skateboarding? How about a Kiss skateboard? How about that? Okay, they're doing these type of shoes. Fucking Kiss shoes. Okay, people dying, they're getting buried in their alma mater, get buried in Kiss. There you go. You got caskets. Well, you got bowling balls. You got Kiss bowling balls. You got 2,700 products. Okay, so it's just a matter of it's branding. It's building the brand. And Kiss is like no other band. You know, they go, well, you guys outdo the Stones. I go, yeah, we outdo the Stones because the Stones don't have a fucking bowling ball. They don't have a tie. They don't have a Christmas ornament. You know what I mean? They don't have shit like that because they're too cool. See? So all the bands that also were too cool to do all this stuff are now doing it all. They're all doing meet and greets, and they're all doing. We started it. I started all that shit, but because they thought it was too cool. You can't do that. Okay, we're not going to do this. That's too cool. Nothing's fucking too cool. Okay, give people access. Give them what they want. They will pay for it. When I signed Mötley Crüe, okay, I went to New Year's Evil, Santa Monica Civic Center. The band was so fucking terrible that I couldn't even hear what they were playing. They were just blowing shit up and rolling around and light themselves on fire. And I looked, and there's 3,000 kids going ape shit, tearing every piece of thing down with Mötley Crüe on it, bought every piece of merchandise in the fucking building, everything. So they didn't suck to them. Now, I wasn't going to go home and get in the hot tub with my wife and put Shout at the Devil on, okay? But I knew that was the pony to ride, okay? That's where it comes from. It's not, and again, sucking is only to the person that thinks it sucks, okay? When you have an audience that, you know, you can't please everybody anyway, so you listen to volume and they have these things where what bands do you hate? Glad you said that. I fucking hate Kiss. I hate Bon Jovi. I hate this. Well, there's hundreds of millions of people that love them. So, okay, if you hate them, whatever. But to me, I like to represent things that more people like than not like. That's pretty much how I do it. It's like finding shit people want to buy and putting Kiss on it. Same concept. How about this? Let's start out with people like you, okay? If they go, well, because nowadays you have these kids come in and are on YouTube. You go, so what's your name? Oh, I'm Jimmy Edwards. What do you do, Jimmy? Oh, I'm in a band called the Fuck Sticks. Oh, that's great, Jimmy. So how's it going for you? Oh, it's great. We just recorded 12 songs and everybody loves it. Our local station playing it. Well, they're playing it. They play some of it. We're on the homegrown records that they have. And so, how's your socials? Well, we have 7,000 on we have 7,000 on Instagram and 12,000 on Facebook. And and so how many people come and see it? Well, we do between 80 and 100 people every time we play. That's fucking fantastic, Jimmy. So what do you want from me? Well, you're Doc McGhee. We want you to make us the biggest band in the world like you've done all the other bands. Okay, so Jimmy, what do I get? Oh, well, I talked to my lawyer and he said something like, I think it's going to give you 15% of something. I don't know what that was. But then if we don't like you, then we can fire you at any time. Well, that's fucking fantastic, Jimmy. How you doing? Get the fuck out of here. And that's where I'm at. I'm Shark Tank. I don't have time for that stuff. Nobody should have time for these people, for these kids. Go out, learn your shit, go there. And one thing about Mötley Crüe, you can say whatever it was. These guys, in the same sense, this is going to sound really crazy, in the same sense that Mötley Crüe is Mötley Crüe, Adele's Adele, okay? When you listen to Adele, you know that she lived every bit of it, and she owns it. And Mötley Crüe owned it, lived it, for sure, okay? Not a pretend, wrote this song for my girlfriend, and none of that shit. They lived the shit, okay? That's why hip-hop is so big. That's why Death Row took over the rock star, because they're in danger. When Pearl Jam and Nirvana and all of them, when it became no production and no fun and let's kill my mother and I'm pissed off at everybody in the world and all that kind of stuff. When that took over, okay, these kids had no star, no rock star. They were shoegazers. They fucking just stood there and fucking played. Like, you go, what the fuck is that? Okay. I didn't sign any of it. People said, why didn't you sign any of those bands? I said, why? Why would I waste? I'd better get a fucking model airplane and hang out with my grandson than I would to spend time with these people, because you don't have the same, I'm not the person that goes, hey, Jimmy, don't worry, everybody gets a trophy for participating. No, man. If you're not fucking good, get out of the way. Okay? That's all. Get better. Be the alpha dog. Okay? That's the way that's how I grew up. That's how I went through this. So with the bands that started all that stuff, when you have the alpha males, which are David Lee Roth, the best front guy in the fucking business that I've ever seen. In 1979 to 85, there wasn't a better front man than David Lee Roth. Just wasn't. So, again, you have to have that star. You have to have that person that people connect to. And when you look at Kendrick Lamar and stuff like that, these kids are stars. And fuck that. Look at Ninja. You know who Ninja is? You know who Tfue is? These are gamers, man. These kids fucking love. I had Kiss open the first annual Gamers Choice Awards 2 weeks ago in L.A. Gene and Paul had no fucking idea what it did. They go, who are these fucking people? I go, don't worry, you have no idea. You're right. What are we at a bar mitzvah or something? There's fucking because you don't see anybody, you know what I mean? Because it's all gaming and it's all, and so I bring Ninja over, right? And I take a picture with Kiss and Ninja. And they go, who the fuck is that kid? I go, this kid's name is Ninja. Okay. He's unbelievably huge. The next morning, Ninja posts his picture with Kiss. 860,000 likes on one photograph. 860,000 likes on one photograph. And now Ninja wants to do something with us. We got, I do this all the time, collaboration with different people, because now all of a sudden Kiss is kind of cool. Okay? They're not cool, but they're kind of cool. Okay? So the kids know them as legends instead of, who the fuck are these old guys in clown outfits? Okay? So, because they touch that world. That's all we could do here, and that's what keeps me doing what I do, because I love connecting those dots with those people. I mean, Kiss is just a perfect fucking example of it. They haven't had a hit ever. They've had big songs that are, anthem songs, but they're one of the biggest bands of all times. They're just no matter who comes to my office, from CEO of a Fortune 500 company, he'll pick up the Kiss snowflake ball or something. We go, wow, that's the fucking coolest thing. Can I have that? It's just, what I mean? All my rest of my shit, Guns N' Roses, all that, fuck that. They could care less. They have to have some. And Kiss is funny because everybody was at 1977 was at Kiss Alive. So everybody was. It's like Woodstock. If everybody really was there that said they were there was like 7-8 million people at Woodstock. So, but it's just, so for me, like I said, the handicapper, picking the right horse to ride, that's what I learned. The only thing to do is to find those stars. Without the stars, it doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean shit. If you had to, it's hard to, because Rich is a really good guy. He's got a great heart. As I said, he'll do anything he goes out of his way all the time to do shit for people. All the time. But that's how he's a promoter. It's hard to, the people that do that are successful because people love him. And you can't not love Rich Engler.